The morning sun shimmered across Willow Lake like scattered diamonds, the gentle lapping of water against the wooden dock the only sound breaking the serene quiet of the upscale lakeside estates neighborhood. Birds chirped from the towering pines lining the shore, and a light breeze carried the fresh scent of pine and water. It was the kind of peaceful dawn that made you forget the world's chaos, until Evelyn Hargrove shattered it. She marched down the dock in her signature bright pink blazer, heels clicking authoritatively against the weathered planks, her perfectly coiffed blonde hair unmoving in the wind. Behind her, a police cruiser pulled up on the gravel access road, lights off but presence unmistakable. Evelyn pointed accusingly at the man calmly casting his fishing line from the end of the dock, his golden retriever, Max, lounging faithfully at his feet. "This is HOA property." Evelyn's voice rang out, sharp and entitled. "You have no right to be here without permission. I've warned you before, this lake belongs to the association." The man, Alex Turner, mid-40s, dressed in a simple brown jacket and jeans, didn't flinch. He reeled in his line slowly, a small bucket of fresh catch already at his side. "Morning, Evelyn," he said calmly, his voice steady and warm, like an old friend greeting another. "Beautiful day for fishing, isn't it?" Evelyn's face reddened. "Don't play games with me. You refused to pay the lake access fee last month, and now you're trespassing. Officer." She waved dramatically at the approaching policeman, who was already stepping onto the dock with a notepad in hand. "Arrest this man. He's violating HOA rules." The officer looked uncomfortable, glancing between them. Alex set down his rod, scratched Max behind the ears, and pulled out his phone. As the confrontation escalated, with Evelyn demanding immediate action and quoting bylaws she'd memorized like scripture, a quiet unease settled in Alex's eyes, not fear, but something deeper. Regret? Resolve? Little did Evelyn know, this wasn't just another defiant resident. Alex had a secret buried in decades-old deeds and family history, one that would turn her world upside down. Alex Turner had always cherished the quiet rhythm of Lakeside Estates, a neighborhood where the homes nestled like jewels around Willow Lake's crystalline shores. It was the kind of place where mornings unfolded with the soft hum of sprinklers watering manicured lawns, and evenings were marked by the distant laughter of families barbecuing on spacious decks. The community, a mix of retirees, young professionals, and growing families, felt like an extended family itself, bound by shared sunsets over the water and the unspoken understanding that this was a sanctuary from the bustling world beyond. Alex had moved here 5 years ago, after inheriting his late grandfather's modest lakeside cabin. At 45, he was a widower, his wife Sarah lost to a sudden illness that left him and their teenage daughter, Mia, clinging to memories. The cabin wasn't much, a cozy 2-story with creaky floors and a wraparound porch overlooking the dock, but it was home. Mia, now 17, thrived here. She'd spend afternoons kayaking on the lake or walking Max, their loyal golden retriever, along the winding paths that connected the properties. Alex worked remotely as a software engineer, but his real passion was the lake, fishing at dawn, teaching Mia to tie knots, or simply sitting with a book as the water lapped gently below. The neighbors were a colorful tapestry that wove the community together. There was old Mr. Jenkins next door, a retired fisherman who swapped stories with Alex over coffee, sharing tips on the best spots for bass. Across the street lived the Patels, a warm Indian family whose weekend curries often wafted invitingly through open windows, leading to impromptu potlucks. Then there were the young couple, the Harisas, with their toddler who adored Max and would toddle over for pets and giggles. It was idyllic, the kind of place where doors stayed unlocked and favors flowed freely, borrowing a lawnmower here, watching a pet there. At the heart of it all was the Homeowners Association, or HOA, led by Evelyn Hargrove. She'd been president for a decade, her husband Gerald a silent partner who nodded along at meetings. Evelyn was the self-appointed guardian of Lakeside Estates' perfection, enforcing paint colors, finding overgrown hedges, and organizing the annual lake festival that brought everyone together with fireworks and food trucks. To many, she was a force for good, meticulous, organized, always with a smile that promised order. Alex had served on the board briefly, appreciating her dedication, even if her rules sometimes felt a tad overzealous. "It's for the community's value," she'd say at meetings, her voice firm but polished, as she outlined new guidelines for dock usage or landscaping. But beneath the surface, small fissures had begun to appear, like hairline cracks in a frozen lake. It started subtly, a year or so after Alex arrived. Whispers at neighborhood gatherings, how Evelyn had pushed through a beautification fee that hit lower-income families hardest, or how she'd vetoed the Patel's request for a modest Diwali light display, citing aesthetic standards. Alex brushed it off at first. Everyone had quirks. Then came the anonymous letters, slipped into mailboxes under cover of night. One warned of rising dues to fund personal projects, another hinted at conflicts of interest in property dealings. Alex found one in his own box, typed neatly, "Watch the lake, it's not as shared as you think." He'd chuckled, assuming it was a disgruntled resident venting steam. Mia noticed it too, in her quiet way. "Dad, why does Mrs. Hargrove always stare at our dock like it's hers?" she'd asked one evening as they grilled fish from the day's catch. Alex had shrugged, but it planted a seed. Rumors swirled online in the neighborhood Facebook group, posts quickly deleted, about Evelyn's family having old ties to the land, perhaps even predating the development. Gerald, a real estate developer, was said to have connections that smoothed approvals for expansions, but nothing concrete. Life carried on, the emotional bonds deepening. Alex and Mia hosted bonfires where stories flowed like the lake's currents, Mr. Jenkins recounting wartime tales, the Patels sharing recipes passed down generations. These moments built a profound connection, a sense of belonging that healed Alex's grief bit by bit. Yet, the warnings lingered, faint echoes in the wind. One crisp autumn afternoon, as Alex raked leaves in his yard, he spotted a stranger, a surveyor in a fluorescent vest, pacing the edge of his property line with a tripod and notepad. The man glanced toward Evelyn's grander home across the way, then back at the lake, marking something down. When Alex approached, the surveyor smiled politely but offered no details. "Just routine mapping," he said, before packing up and driving off in an unmarked van. Alex watched him go, a subtle chill settling in despite the warm sun, a feeling that the peaceful facade was about to crack wide open. The surveyor's visit lingered in Alex's mind like a splinter he couldn't quite pull out. He told himself it was nothing, routine county work, perhaps updating flood maps. But when a thick manila envelope arrived at his doorstep a week later, unmarked except for his name typed in plain font, curiosity overpowered caution. Inside were photocopies of old property deeds, plat maps from the 1940s, and a handwritten note on yellowed legal paper: "Your grandfather never sold the lakefront parcel. Check the chain of title." No signature, just a faint coffee stain in the corner. That evening, after Mia had gone to bed, Alex spread the documents across the kitchen table under the warm glow of a single lamp. Max lay at his feet, snoring softly. At first, the legal jargon blurred together: meets and bounds, easements, reversionary interests. He brewed a pot of coffee and dug deeper, cross-referencing the parcel numbers with online county records he'd never thought to examine before. What he found stopped his breath. His grandfather, William Turner, had originally owned nearly the entire eastern shore of Willow Lake, 40 acres that included not just the cabin and dock, but the land beneath half the modern lakeside estate's homes, including the Hargrove sprawling colonial. In the late 1970s, when the area was developed, William had sold off individual lots but retained ownership of the lake itself and a narrow strip of shoreline running behind every property. He'd granted the new homeowners permanent easements for access, on the condition that a simple annual maintenance fee, never more than a token amount, be paid to his estate. The lake was never deeded to the HOA. Yet for decades, the Lakeside Estates HOA had collected lake access dues from every resident, funneling thousands of dollars yearly into an account Evelyn controlled. The original easement agreement had been quietly buried, replaced in HOA records with forged documents claiming full ownership transfer in 1982, a year after William's death, when Alex's father, overwhelmed by grief and medical bills, had signed whatever papers a smooth-talking developer put in front of him. Gerald Hargrove's name appeared repeatedly in the margins, as the developer who'd handled the transition, as the notary on questionable signatures, as the beneficiary of discounted lots sold to family members. Evelyn, even then a young bride eager to climb the social ladder, had been the one to champion the new bylaws that turned a communal lake into a private cash stream. Alex sat back, the chair creaking in the silence. His hands didn't shake, instead, a cold clarity settled over him, like the lake freezing on a still winter night. He thought of every fine Evelyn had levied, every neighbor pressured into compliance, every time she'd smiled sweetly while quoting rules that enriched her family. The anonymous letters, the deleted Facebook posts, the surveyor, it all clicked into place. Someone, perhaps a retired clerk at the county office, had finally decided to speak truth to power. He walked out onto the porch, the chill night air sharp against his skin. Moonlight silvered the water, turning the dock into a pale ribbon stretching into darkness. Max padded out beside him, pressing warm fur against his leg. Alex stared across the lake at the Hargroves' house, its windows glowing smugly. They had stolen more than land. They'd stolen peace of mind from dozens of families, turned neighbors against each other with arbitrary rules, and built their empire on a lie his own family had been too broken to challenge decades ago. Disbelief gave way to a deep, aching sorrow, not just for himself, but for what the neighborhood could have been without the weight of their greed. Then came the slow-burning realization, he held the power now. The deeds were ironclad. The easements revocable with proper notice. He could dismantle everything they'd built, legally and completely. But anger felt too easy, too loud. Evelyn thrived on drama, on righteous indignation. No, this required patience. Alex rested his hands on the porch railing, feeling the rough wood his grandfather had planed by hand. He whispered into the night, voice steady and calm, I won't fight in anger. I'll wait. The lake lapped quietly below, as if listening. In the days following his discovery, Alex channeled the simmering rage into a methodical plan, treating it like a complex code he needed to debug, one line at a time, no shortcuts. He started small, in the quiet hours after Mia went to bed, his laptop screen the only light in the darkened cabin. Max curled at his feet as he navigated online portals, beginning with the county recorder's website. Public records were free to access, but fragmented, deeds scanned into PDFs, some dating back to the 1940s, others locked behind paywalls on sites like uselandrecords.com. He traced the chain of title backward, starting from his grandfather's original 40-acre parcel, noting every transfer, every subdivision plat map that carved lakeside estates from the wilderness. The first breakthrough came at 2 a.m., coffee gone cold beside him. Cross-referencing with FamilySearch.org, a genealogy site with digitized historical deeds, he uncovered a 1978 easement agreement his grandfather had filed. It granted lake access to new lot buyers but retained subsurface rights and ownership of the water body itself, revocable if fees weren't paid or if misuse occurred. The document had been notarized by a long-retired clerk, its language ironclad, no full transfer to any association without explicit consent. Alex printed it, tucking it into a growing file folder labeled simply Lake Docs. But he needed more, physical proof, something unassailable. The next morning, under the guise of routine errands, he drove to the county courthouse, a squat brick building 30 miles away in the county seat. The records room smelled of dust and old paper, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. A helpful clerk guided him to the microfiche machines for pre-digital files. There, buried in reel after reel, he found the hidden gems, original surveyor's notes from 1976, showing the shoreline strip as a retained easement corridor, and a 1982 amendment suspiciously added after his grandfather's death. Gerald Hargrove's signature appeared as witness, the ink faded but damning. Alex requested certified copies, paying the fee in cash to avoid any digital trail that might alert watchful eyes. Tension mounted with each step, like positioning pawns in a chess game where one wrong move could expose his strategy. He varied his routine, logging into public Wi-Fi at a coffee shop for searches on HOA bylaws, avoiding home IP addresses. Whispers from the anonymous letters echoed in his mind. Someone was watching, perhaps even helping. A late-night dive into Reddit forums on r/HOA revealed common pitfalls: associations forging documents to claim common areas, misusing dues for personal gain. One post detailed a similar case in Florida, where a homeowner won by proving chain of title fraud through forensic document analysis. Alex knew he couldn't go it alone. After a week of solo sleuthing, he scheduled a discreet meeting with a real estate attorney in a neighboring town, Rachel Levin, recommended via an online review site for her expertise in property disputes. They met in her modest office, blinds drawn against the afternoon sun. He laid out the deeds, the forged amendments, the HOA's lake access fees that had ballooned from $50 annually to $500 under Evelyn's reign. Rachel nodded, her eyes sharpening as she reviewed the papers. "This is selective enforcement at best, fraud at worst," she said. "We'll start with a quiet title action, file a lawsuit to clarify ownership based on the original deeds. But first, demand records from the HOA under state law. They have 10 days to comply, or it's a violation." They plotted next moves: subpoena financials to trace misused funds, hire a surveyor for fresh boundary stakes, and gather affidavits from longtime residents like Mr. Jenkins, who might recall the original agreements. Alex left with a retainer agreement and a warning: keep it under wraps. HOAs fight dirty, expect pushback. Back home, he pored over state statutes on his phone, noting requirements for HOA transparency under laws like the Uniform Common Interest Ownership Act. Every discovery fueled his resolve, but he moved deliberately, documenting emails, saving screenshots, building an airtight case. Evelyn continued her patrols, oblivious, finding a neighbor for an unapproved bird feeder while Alex watched from his porch, expression neutral. They had no idea what was coming. The county courtroom hummed with the low murmur of spectators, the air thick with the scent of polished wood and stale coffee. Sunlight filtered through tall windows, casting long shadows across the oak benches where Lakeside Estates residents sat, Mr. Jenkins fidgeting with his cap, the Patels whispering quietly, the Harisas holding hands. Alex Turner stood at the plaintiff's table, his attorney Rachel Levin beside him, a stack of certified documents laid out like a winning hand. Evelyn Hargrove, in her crisp pink suit, sat rigidly at the defense table with Gerald, her face a mask of indignant composure. Their lawyer, a slick man in pinstripes, shuffled papers, unaware of the trap closing around them. The judge, a no-nonsense woman with silver hair, entered with a door creak that echoed like fate sealing itself. "Court is in session," she announced, her gavel striking once, thud, silencing the room. Rachel began, her voice steady and precise. "Your Honor, this quiet title action seeks to clarify ownership of Willow Lake and its shoreline easements. Evidence shows my client, Alex Turner, holds the original deed from 1940, retained by his grandfather. The HOA's claim is based on forged amendments from 1982. Gasps rippled through the crowd as Rachel projected the documents onto a screen, side-by-side comparisons of signatures, one authentic and faded, the other suspiciously crisp. Forensic analysis, commissioned quietly weeks prior, highlighted ink inconsistencies and digital timestamps on original HOA files. These were altered, Rachel continued, to divert dues into personal accounts. Over $200,000 in the last decade alone. Evelyn's composure cracked, she leaned to her lawyer, whispering furiously. Gerald paled, his hands trembling as he adjusted his tie. The tension built like a storm gathering over the lake, every rustle of paper amplifying the suspense. Alex remained calm, his eyes meeting Evelyn's across the room, not with triumph, but quiet resolve. The big reveal came when Rachel called a surprise witness, the anonymous tipster, a retired county clerk who'd worked with Gerald decades ago. The old man shuffled to the stand, oath taken with a quavering voice. "I notarized the original easements," he testified. "But in '82, Mr. Hargrove asked me to backdate changes. Said it was housekeeping. I refused, but they found someone else. The courtroom fell silent, the weight of betrayal hanging heavy. Evelyn erupted. Lies. This is a witch hunt. But the judge's gavel cracked, thud, thud, restoring order. Cross-examination faltered, their lawyer stammered as bank records, subpoenaed from HOA accounts, showed transfers to Hargrove family vacations and home renovations. Neighbors shifted uncomfortably, pieces falling into place, the inflated fees, the denied requests, the power plays. The justice unfolded cleverly, without shouts or fists. The judge ruled in Alex's favor, the lake reverted to his ownership, easements intact but dues redirected to a community trust for maintenance only. The HOA was dissolved pending audit, fines levied against the Hargroves for fraud, $150,000 restitution to residents. Paper signing followed, the scratch of pens like whispers of vindication. Evelyn's face crumpled as she signed the settlement, her empire crumbling in legalese. As the gavel fell one final time, thud, the silence stretched, then broke into subdued applause from the gallery. Neighbors hugged, relief washing over them like a cleansing rain. Outside, under a sky mirroring the lake's blue, Alex walked to his truck, Max bounding up from Mia's side. Evelyn approached, defeated but unbowed. "You planned this," she hissed. Alex turned, voice soft. "I waited. For justice, not revenge." He drove away, the neighborhood behind him, whole again. In the end, it wasn't the land reclaimed that brought peace, but the lake's quiet return to what it always was, a shared mirror reflecting not ownership, but community's gentle flow. In the months following the courtroom verdict, a gentle calm settled over lakeside estates, like the quiet after a long summer storm has passed. The lake, once a battleground of rules and resentment, became simply water again, clear, inviting, and free. Alex chose not to evict anyone or impose new fees. Instead, he formed a simple community trust, open to all residents, where voluntary contributions covered dock repairs and shoreline cleanup. The inflated dues vanished overnight, replaced by shared responsibility. Neighbors who once avoided eye contact now waved from their porches. Mr. Jenkins dropped off fresh-caught fish without being asked. The Patels hosted a Diwali celebration on the common green, lights twinkling without fear of fines. The Harisa's toddler chased Max along the dock, laughter echoing across the water where tension once hung heavy. For Alex and Mia, healing deepened. Evenings on the porch became sacred again, father and daughter watching sunsets paint the lake in hues of gold and rose. Mia, heading to college soon, spoke openly about her mother for the first time in years, the weight of old grief lighter now that justice had balanced the scales. Alex returned to fishing at dawn, the rhythmic cast and reel a meditation on patience. He no longer felt the need to prove anything, the land had spoken for itself. Evelyn and Gerald moved quietly, their grand home sold to cover restitution. The neighborhood didn't gloat, there were no celebrations at their expense. Instead, people felt a collective release, as if exhaling a breath held for decades. Alex learned that true power isn't in control, but in restraint, that revenge, when tempered by wisdom, becomes restoration. He discovered that justice doesn't have to shout to be heard, it simply rights the wrong and steps aside, allowing life to flow back into its natural channel. Peace, he realized, feels like the lake on a still morning, undisturbed, reflective, and deep enough to hold both sorrow and joy without ripple. It's the knowledge that what was taken can sometimes be returned, not perfectly, but honestly, and that a community, once divided by greed, can choose unity when given the chance. Some battles aren't won by fighting harder, but by waiting until the truth surfaces on its own, calm and undeniable, like sunlight breaking through clouds over still water. If you enjoyed this story of quiet justice and emotional redemption, hit that like button, subscribe for more smart revenge tales from HOA Stories, and ring the bell so you never miss an upload. See you in the next one.